Hey guys, remember The Walking Dead, Season 7, Episode 11, Hostiles and Calamities, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. I've been enjoying the scene so far, as you guys know, but I was definitely worried about going in this episode because, one, it's the episode for the Oscar, during the Oscars, and usually that's not a good sign. Those episodes are usually very slow and not a ton happens because they know people are watching the Oscars and they're not going to put a ton to happen in it. But also because this was a return to the cell, and we already got that episode with the cell in, season 7, episode 3, so I really wasn't sure why we needed this episode, even though I was kind of interested in seeing what was going to happen here. And overall, I thought this was a good episode. It wasn't great. I thought it was good. I don't think it was the most interesting episode. I think it definitely did shine some light on something that we need to see, but I don't think we need a whole episode on it, and I'm going to get into that, but let's just get into this episode and talk about overall. So, Fat Joey's sandwich lays on the ground beside him, and his smashed head as Savoirs observe the body. Dwight sees him just as before hearing Negan is heard pulling up. Dwight returns to Daryl's cell frantically to find him, but it's empty. So Dwight's kind of on his own mission right now, and outside Savoirs escort Eugene out of a truck with a bag over his head. Negan's happy to see him, and Negan was a bit more toned down in this episode. Like, I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan, they received complaints that he was kind of a cartoon, because after a while, there's only so much you can take of that, so I do like that Negan was a bit more toned down here. Still very sadistic, but a little bit more believable, and I like what they did with him here. Dwight searches the sanctuary, finds him room raided with Daryl's jumpsuit on the floor, and Eugene's escorted through the compound, terrified. He begs for mercy before being shown a bedroom by Laura. She says, "Welcome home," haircut, as she cuts the ties on his arms. He slowly looks around, starting with books, and Laura tells him that there are more at the library. She tells him that Daryl didn't get a chance to see it before escaping. So clearly they want to make Eugene the next Daryl. So Dwight finds a go now note on the floor in Daryl's cell, and we're not entirely sure what's going to happen here with Dwight. We know he's obviously not going to find Daryl, but he's on the search, and you don't know what's going to happen. So Eugene tells Laura he doesn't know where Daryl went. She offers him food. Eugene asks for lobster, and when that fails, he asks for canned potatoes and tomato sauce. They have it, but they're out of pickles. So number 42 makes chips, though, but Eugene doesn't like them from the kettle. She says she'll be back in 10 and goes to get his food. So he checks his fridge, finds it fully stocked with producing drinks. He presses play on his stereo, and Easy Street starts playing, which I guess is kind of like the go-to-go song for anyone that's in the cell, because, Daryl had that throughout the episode, and now, throughout his episode, now Eugene has it in his, so Eugene starts bobbing his head. He's actually getting into it, which I thought was actually kind of funny, and Eugene's hailing himself a lot different than that of Daryl. Like, Eugene is kind of realizing that he just kind of needs to go along with this, and that he's someone who's, very easily manipulated, and that's something that happens to Eugene here. He's continually manipulated, and, people have said before he's a coward, and if there's anything true, it definitely shows Eugene is definitely still a coward. This episode definitely shows that. So elsewhere, Dwight stares at the note, which freed Daryl. Saviors burst in, start beating him as Negan looks on, and we then see Dwight, he's locked in Daryl's cell. Negan talks to him from the outside, and Negan says that when he got back, he realized that he was short a wife. So Sherry's missing. Negan asks where she went, how it could be such a coincidence that she's gone at the same time. And this was, again, genuinely a creepy scene. And Daryl is, and, the same time Daryl is, how could he do that to her? So Dwight insists it wasn't Sherry who freed Daryl. Negan asked Dwight if he freed Daryl. He asked if he was supposed to break him. Did he break him? And Negan says he can change his stripes on him, and Negan then bangs on the door, startles Dwight. After all this before and after everything, he asks who he is, and Dwight says that he's Negan. So Negan opens the door. Dwight's scared. He slowly rises to see Negan and Dr. Carson. Negan insists that Daryl is either on his way home or he's coming back to Sanctuary to try and kill more Saviors, which Negan knows Daryl pretty well. I mean, even though Daryl wasn't there for too long, he knows him pretty well. He knows the way Daryl operates, and either way, they're going to find him. So, there's no way they're going to let Daryl escape, and I've said this before, Daryl's in danger, definitely. Like, Daryl might think that he's safe right now, but he's probably the one character that's in the most danger right now. It makes sense why he's not with Carol. It makes sense why he's not really with Rick in the group. He's doing whatever he can to isolate himself because I think he knows that he's bait, and I think he knows that they're on the trail for him. So Daryl's doing whatever he can to just, hide as best as he can, but he knows eventually he's getting caught. I think definitely he has that in the back of his mind. So Dwight says he thinks he knows where Sherry went and is instructed to bring her back, and Negan tells him to fix what he can fix. So as the doctor tends to Dwight's injury, he wonders whether Sherry Sherry actually freed Daryl. So the doctor tries to push Dwight to buy into Negan's ways and says that the kind of person who would marry Negan to save her husband isn't expected to be around anymore. So he's clearly trying to poison Dwight's mind with all this stuff and things like that. So back in his room, Dwight's about to head out, but grabs a hidden pack of cigarettes from the fish on the wall. One cigarette has lipstick on it. He heads out with his reflection being shown in Fat Joey's blood. And inside the sanctuary, Laura continues to show Eugene around. She even informs him of their barber and suggests he get a haircut. And yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since Eugene actually got a haircut. She's excited to show him the pickles are back in stock. She signs a jar out, hands it to Eugene, and outside Eugene meets Negan, who's observing the walkers on the wall. He insists Eugene not to be rude. He holds his jar of pickles as he reluctantly shares his name. Negan asks the surrounding saviors their names, and they tell him Negan. Negan shows Eugene the bullet in Lucille, and instead of showing it to him very closely over and over again, he wants to know if Eugene knows things. And Eugene says that he's very smart. He taught himself to make bullets, and he reads a lot, so we now know that's the reason why Negan recruited him. Of course, he knows that Eugene was the maker of the bullet, so Negan insists he's just some asshole, and Eugene says he's not. He tells Negan he has PhD in biochemistry and microbiology. He has completed his doctorate and insists he worked under Dr. T. Dr. T. Brooks Ellis. So he used the fire with fire line he did with Abraham and the others in Season 4. So Negan points out the zombies are surrounded the sanctuary to protect it, and he wants to know how to keep them on their feet. So Eugene's trying to make his stay as comfortable as possible, but as we know, if you don't, listen to the terms that Negan has, things get real worse, and that's kind of already happening to Eugene. So he suggests smoldering metal to harden it around the walkers. Negan says it's the coolest thing he's ever heard in his life. He asks if Rick knows what he's doing, this kind of valuable stuff for him. His lost their gang, and Negan suggests a signing bonus, and Eugene says that he was gifted these pickles as a token of his gratitude. Negan's then going to send some wives to Eugene's room, but says there will be no sex. So clearly Eugene's a lot more obedient than Daryl was, and I did like that contrast between the two. I think it was actually kind of interesting, but Eugene can enjoy their company over dinner, and Eugene sincerely thanks Negan. So Eugene's been playing some video games with some of Negan's wives. Amber's drinking heavily. Frankie suggests she take it easy. They're bored with Yard's revenge, and he suggests they play Warlord. So Frankie insists this is Eugene's night, offers a message he doesn't accept, and insists that they're not here of their own volition, and video games are his way of showing them a good time. This is all because he was good. This is something that Negan essentially did for him. They're kind of his slaves, and they can do whatever they want, except for, he can't have sex with them. So they want to talk about the human Gemini project, but Eugene shuts it down, says he's not at liberty to discuss it, and they wouldn't understand it. So he insists he's far smarter than the common man. And yeah, we've seen, Eugene is definitely a smart guy. Does he make the best decisions? No. Definitely, he doesn't really do things for his benefit. He doesn't really do things that look good. And he very much takes the easy way out. Like I said, he's very much of a coward. He doesn't like violence, and that's something that has helped Eugene, but after a while, it's gonna start to, cripple him. So Eugene goes outside with wives equipped with balloons and ingredients to make a brain. Keno comes outside and to see what's going on. The wives insist that they are fine. Eugene prepares one of his bonds by lighting a candle. He hums as he makes the ingredients, and balloons explode. And the next day, Dwight then enters his old house, and he finds photos of himself of him and Sherry on the floor, and she says that they always said that if they got separated that she should come back and wait for him. So he continues to search the house as Sherry talks. Now this was a genuinely good scene. I've said before, I really do like what they've done with Dwight, showing who Dwight was before he was with Negan. He finds a note in the sink, but compares the handwriting to the note which freed Daryl that match. It turns out that he's reading a letter from Sherry. She doesn't know if he would go with her or take her back to the sanctuary. He says he did what he had to do because he didn't want him to die, but now that he's killed, she's become everything that she didn't want him to be. She confesses to freeing Daryl, and Dwight became emotional, collapsed on the floor, says that she's wrong, that being there isn't better than being dead, it's worse. She hopes he remembers that and get away, and she hopes he remembers the good old days, even just one of them. So now he knows that Sherry is the one responsible, and she said she loved who he was. She's sorry she made him into who he is, and it's honestly a pretty emotional scene. Knowing what Dwight's been through, where he's had this girl who's loved him all his life, and he's loved her as well, but they can't be together in that sense. It's really sad, honestly. I really did feel bad for Dwight and Sherry. in this scenario. It was definitely very sad to see. But Dwight pulls out Sherry's cigarette, pours his wedding band from the cart, and is sitting next to her rings in his hand. And before putting them back in the car, and moments later, he pulls out some beer, and he's willing to do what he can to try to apologize to her. But we can tell that definitely Sherry, as we've seen in the entire show, is really not Dwight's to handle. So back at the sanctuary, Eugene plays more video games as the wives approach. They tell Eugene they need his help, and they point out that Amber just drinks and cries, and Frankie explains they choose to be Negan's wives, but Amber, however, did it because she had to pay for her mom, who needed medication, and Eugene wonders how they aren't afforded medical health services. You know, it makes sense that they do that after all the shit they go through. They reveal that Amber actually wants to commit suicide. He points that if she dies in her sleep, she will come back as a walker within the sanctuary, and I like the way Eugene knows a lot of this stuff. Like, he's very aware of the way this is going to go, so they plead for his help. Eugene ends up saying he's not a good man, and I would agree. Eugene's not really a great man. He hasn't really done anything that, in my opinion, is worth calling him a hero. He's really not a hero. He's a coward. I mean, there's really no other way to categorize it. He is a coward, and he's not going to help Amber kill herself. He's just not going to do this. They continue to persuade him, ultimately getting Eugene on board. He promises a pain-free death, and the next day Eugene waits in line for supplies, but ultimately cuts it. The woman insists Eugene gets back in the line, but he turns around and asks what her number is. He's number 16, states his credentials, telling her she reports directly to him. He takes the cold capsules, signs for them, and leaves, but not before grabbing a toilet set, a fly swatter, a stuffed animal, and medical supplies. He heads out a grin in his room, prepares the drugs for Amber, and in Dr. Carson's office, Dwight tells him he killed Sherry. She ran away from him and into a mess of dead ones, so he made it quick. And Carson insists the people were cowards before being part of the Saviors. Carson says they don't get to have big hearts, remember that. And this surprised me. I didn't expect Dwight to go in this direction, but I mean, I get it. You know, he wanted to protect, I think he genuinely wants to protect Sherry. You know, he knew what Negan could potentially do to Sherry if he were to find out, and I think this was done in a way where he was trying to help her. But I just don't really know where Dwight's going to go now, because I thought this whole story was going to be him trying to reunite with Sherry, and possibly, I don't know if he's trying to save Daryl, but I don't really know where we're going with this right now. I'll get more into that, but Eugene's escorted through the sanctuary by Laura. They've gathered to watch Negan and his iron. Negan enters the room, everyone rises. He says they're going to want to pay close attention to this. He says to Eugene before striking Carson with a bat, he found a note that said, "Goodbye, honey," in Carson's desk. It's ripped from the note that Dwight found. He says he left the door open and let his dog out, and he insists that Carson's a weasel. Carson says that Dwight is lying about Sherry's story and death. Negan doesn't buy it because Dwight knows he would die for lying. You know, he knows that he straight up killed her. So Dwight agrees before handing Negan the iron. Carson begs Negan not to burn him. Negan requests a confession from Carson, gets it, relents on the iron. Negan looks to Eugene for a moment before tossing Carson entirely into the fire, which was surprising that we didn't see, but I think it's because all the complaints they've had with the excessive violence, they wanted to tone it down, which I think is kind of a dumb move in my opinion. I think one of the things that draws people to the show is how it doesn't hold back, but they didn't show it there, and basically the wives are terrified, and Negan says it's a good thing they got a spare, and Negan says to Dwight about Eugene, Carson's legs hanging from the fire beneath them, and definitely probably the most gruesome scene of the episode, but again, in such a sluggish episode, it doesn't really stick out just because of the fact that the episode in general really wasn't all that great, but I definitely did like the way this wrapped up. So Eugene plays games in his room later as the wives enter. They ask if he's alright. They ask if he made the pills. He did, but won't give them to him. He knows the pills are for Negan, not Amber. They reveal their true intention as if Negan killed their friend. So Eugene insists that Negan won't believe him over them, like he just chose Dwight over the doctor because they're irreplaceable. And they call him a coward before leaving, and he tells them that's correct. So he knows straight up that he's a coward. Like, he is prepared for all of it. He's been told everything. So alone in his room, he starts eating pickles until Negan knocks the door. He walks in, says the wives had nothing but good things to say about him. He tries to stonewall his emotions. And Negan says he needs him to understand something. He does not make this invitation to everyone, and he sure as shit does not make it lightly. Eugene gets frightened as Negan approaches, but Negan promises that he does not need to be scared anymore. He asks one question, who is he? Eugene doesn't hesitate to say that he is Negan, which is the exact opposite of what Daryl just did. So the next day, Eugene watched over the Saviors, trying to put metal helmets on the walkers of the wall. Dwight stands beside him. Eugene apologizes for biting him, reintroduces himself, and says that they are Negan, and that is the way this episode ends. Let's just get in this episode and what's going to happen from here. So, like I said, this was a good episode. I didn't love this episode. I think it definitely could have been a lot better, but it's mainly because the characters that we're following. Eugene, in my opinion, has not been that compelling of a character. He once was. When he was with Abraham and Rosita, and we had that incredible episode where he lied to them about being the scientist and all this stuff, and how he just made that up to make himself, fit so that way he would fit into their group. I mean, he's always been a bit selfish, but he admits it. He knows that he's selfish. That guilt looms over him. And that's something I've always liked about Eugene. Now that Abraham and Rosita are gone, though, Eugene on his own is just not that interesting of a character, in my opinion. I did not find him that interesting in this episode. I didn't really find him to be that grasped by his character. And I feel like there's a lot more stuff they could have done with him. Like, he could have been grieving Abraham or talking about things he's done in the past. And I don't know. I feel like they really missed a lot of the opportunities with Eugene as a character here. And I think it's mainly because this should not have been a full episode. I think that you could have easily had this as a subplot spread throughout different episodes, but not in one big episode. As one episode, this just isn't that interesting to me. I feel like this felt more like a subplot rather than it did the main plots. And I'm not saying the actor did bad. I think the actor was fine. I think definitely there was some interesting stuff in there. And I do like the way he is giving into Negan, because that's the exact opposite of what Daryl is doing. Eugene is taking a much different approach. Eugene is thinking, all right, he's going to, if I just bow down to Negan, I can get anything I want anyway, so why don't I just do that? Daryl, on the other hand, had a little bit more of a backbone, where he decided that he's going to strike against Negan and try to do what he can to steer away from him. He's doing what he can to survive, while Eugene's doing what he can to survive, and it's two very different survival methods, and I did find that aspect of the episode quite interesting. The problem with this episode is that what it really focuses on just wasn't all that interesting to me. Eugene and the wives, or Eugene in this community, it just was kind of boring. It was a very slow moving episode. There wasn't a ton happening, and I really wanted more going on here. I was very surprised with the direction they ended up taking. I definitely did like seeing Eugene and Negan scenes together, because it's very different from that of Daryl and Negan, but they didn't make enough comparisons between the two, and I feel like they definitely could have done more with that overall, but that's, again, just how I feel about it. As far as the whole thing goes on with Amber, as we know, Eugene did not end up killing Amber, which I didn't think he was going to either, but he's even admitted that he's a coward. Like, he doesn't want to instigate fights, he doesn't want to do anything that actually requires work, and he doesn't want to cause any sort of problems or, do anything like that. So I don't really know what he thinks he's doing, getting himself involved with Negan, who's going to require him to kill the one thing that Eugene really does not want to do. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't really know where we're going with this, and now I'm a bit confused. I don't really know what's going to happen at this point. But again, we'll have to see. I really have no idea where we're going with that. Dwight is the other thing that kind of pissed me off here. I really have liked Dwight as a character. I think they've done a very good job of showing how different Dwight is from Negan, but how, like Eugene, he's realized that his best position is to be serving to Negan. Even though he doesn't want to, his best bet is to do that, because Negan will give him everything he needs. He will give him all kinds of supplies. He'll give him all the medical care, everything. But we now realize they don't really have great medical care. That's like one of the only things they don't have. But Dwight in this episode, I really was not expecting him to kill Sherry. I get that Negan told him to do it because she was a traitor and everything, but I don't know. Now that Sherry's killed, I don't know where Dwight's really going to go, and at this point, I don't really care about Dwight as much. I feel like it's been so many episodes since we've seen Dwight that I'm kind of getting tired of this storyline. I like Dwight as a character, don't get me wrong, but this just was not the most interesting storyline. I felt they could have definitely done more with it. I like where they went with Sherry. I like that he was kind of, surprised at what she did, but just in general, it felt very anticlimactic and unsatisfying. I felt like they definitely could have gone a much different direction with it. And that definitely did disappoint me overall. Like I said, I liked that Negan was more toned down. I actually thought it made him a little more intimidating here, and I definitely really did like seeing that. Overall, guys, was a good episode. Not a bad episode by any means. Just, in my opinion, did not need to be a full episode. I get it. It was the Oscars episode. They didn't want to have too much going on. Next week, we're going to return to the main storyline. I don't know if we're going to see Eugene again. I'm sure we will. I don't know if Eugene's really going to make it past the season, but again, we'll have to see. But overall, guys, I'm going to give The Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 11, Hostilities and Calamities, a 3.5 out of 5 or a B. So we're guys, making this episode of The Walking Dead. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Do you like where this season is headed? Did you think this episode was necessary? I really didn't think it was that necessary, in my opinion. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next, which will be for tonight's episode of Supergirl, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.